Welcome back to another episode of With a Grain of Salt. I am your host, Isaiah Salter, and I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in for yet another week. We are back and we're better. As you can see, we got the Yeti. I've been drinking black coffee again. I was off caffeine for a little bit, but now I've gotten back to it because I'm starting to fast for longer periods of time. I've realized that I've been doing it for about a week now, and I feel so much more better, so much more clear mentally, and it just feels good, and my gut feels a lot more clear. You don't feel so all the time. So what black coffee does, I don't put anything in my coffee, straight black. What it does is it suppresses your appetite so you can push back when you eat a little longer. So I try to eat around my first meal around 12:30 to 1 o'clock, and then I try to be done around 8, 9, and then I fast. And it's just really been helping me. I think I'm going to let you guys go do your research on fasting so you guys can see the benefits and stuff like that. But this is just the season that I'm in and what's required, what my body is requiring or asking of me right now. So I'm doing that. So we got the Yeti. Today's episode, I hope each and every one of y'all are doing amazing. Today's episode is going to be on how to cultivate, navigate, and find healthy relationships, right? I think relationships are one of the core elements of us as individuals, as us as souls and spirits, and as a society of humanity, right? And being able to understand how to navigate them, how to find them, how to cultivate healthy relationships is something that every single person needs to learn how to do. I'm going to start off this episode, right, with saying the number one relationship, the most important relationship you have in your life is the one you have with yourself. I've learned that if you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself internally, it's gonna be incredibly difficult to have healthy relationships with other people externally, right? Because a lot of times the relationships that we get involved in are a reflection of the relationship we have with ourselves, right? So if we keep getting involved with toxic people, if we keep getting involved in toxic relationships, if we keep getting involved in very negative, relationships, we need to take a look at ourselves and figure out, why do we keep attracting these type of people, right? And that leads us into our first key, our first point. It starts with you. Understand you attract what you are, not what you want, right? When it comes to relationships, a lot of people want certain things in a relationship, but they don't understand that's not the energy that they are cultivating within themselves. You can't expect to get something externally if you haven't cultivated the energy that aligns with that internally, right? And that's why you need to first start with the relationship you have with yourself. I love this. It says your vibe attracts your tribe. Your vibe attracts your tribe. It absolutely does. Your vibe attracts your tribe, right? You need to be very, very intentional with your life, the choices you are making, how you're speaking, the energy you are cultivating, the energy you are putting out into the world. Because intentional living will lead to you having healthier relationships. When it comes to relationships, when it comes to letting people into your life, you need to be intentional with who you allow into your space. I like to view myself as having an energy bubble around me, right? And I'm incredibly intentional with who I allow into that energy bubble. If it don't align, if you're negative, if you're closed-minded, if you're pessimistic, I have that energy bubble, and I am not going to allow you inside of that. And that's coming from a place of love, a love for yourself and a love for that person. Because if you truly love somebody, you're going to do what's best for them. And what's best for them is not being around you, right? And that's also what's best for you. But sometimes we have to understand that what's best for the relationship sometimes is going to hurt the most, right? The decision that's actually best is sometimes going to hurt the most. Oftentimes it's going to hurt the most. And you have to be willing to make those painful decisions in order to find and cultivate the relationships that are actually for you, that are actually aligned with you as a person, as an individual, right? Start with clarity on the values and qualities you seek in relationships. And being intentional draws in people who resonate with your true self. This is why living in your truth is so important. It is incredibly important. A lot of people get involved in relationships and attract people from a place of not being true to themselves, not from a place of authenticity and alignment, right? And I've learned that Nothing in your life will work truly and fully if it's not 100% aligned with your truth, with who you actually were made to be, with who you actually are at the core. And this is why it's so important to go down that inner journey and figure out who you actually are. You need to learn how to look within yourself so that you can start to live authentically and aligned and start to cultivate relationships from that place rather than from a place of not knowing who I am, not knowing my values, not knowing what I stand for, not knowing my character, right? And that's what creates a lot of confusion in these relationships, is because a lot of times you have individuals who don't know themselves trying to come together and figure out how to work. It's not going to work. That's two confused and lost individuals, right? Now, here's the beautiful thing about relationships. The foundation of relationships are often built on commitment. If you're in a relationship with somebody, right? So, prime example, one of my professors or mentors at school at the university I went to, he's been with his wife since they were in middle school, right? They've been together now, and he's about 35, 36. It's a long time, 17, 18 years, and they've had to grow up together. They've had to mature together. Sometimes you're going to be in situations where you're with somebody for a long period of time and you guys have experienced different seasons individually and collectively. The thing that's going to allow you guys to maintain the relationship through the growth and the healing and the cultivation is the commitment to each other. I am committed to you as an individual, as a partner, to making this work through good, bad, or indifferent. You need to have that commitment. A lot of people mess up in relationships, especially intimate relationships, because they allow their feelings to be the foundation. They allow their emotions to be the foundation of the relationship rather than the commitment. So now when those emotions or those feelings aren't where they once were, what happens to the relationship? It starts to fold. It starts to crumble. And everybody's looking around like, what happened? There's no commitment. There's no strong foundation for that relationship, right? And your relationship is only as strong as the foundation it's built on. Your relationships are only as strong as the foundation they are built on. So you need to focus on building strong foundations so that you can cultivate and keep and nurture healthy relationships in your life. You cannot have a healthy relationship with a weak foundation. They don't align. You can't have a healthy relationship with a weak foundation, right? And a lot of times the foundation is the two individuals. So if you have a weak foundation within yourself as far as your character and living in your truth, and that other person does also, you guys are setting yourself up to have a lot of issues in that relationship, right? And I see it all the time, man. People are struggling trying to figure out, why this person is doing this, or, excuse me. I feel like that's becoming a constant thing in episodes now. I'm just dropping pins. But they wonder why all these things are happening, all this toxicity, all this negative energy, all this confusion and disagreement and non-alignment. Like, why is all this happening? Well, it's because we're built on a weak foundation. But here's the beautiful thing. We can work on that. We can fix that. We can heal from it. We can grow from it. And that's what we're going to talk about. The second point, you need to value quality over quantity. Now, when I speak about relationships, this is the beautiful thing about taking life with a grain of salt. When I say relationships, however it applies to you, you take that. Maybe you're in a relationship with a significant other. Take the advice and apply it to that. Maybe you're thinking about relationships with your friends. Take it and apply it to that. Maybe you're thinking about relationships you have with family members and close relatives. Take it and apply it to that. All these things apply to everything in our life. It's just about what applies to you and your unique journey. Take it with a grain of salt, because your journey is different than my journey. And our journey is different than her journey and his journey. And we all get to take bits and pieces from all these different things in life and apply it to our own unique journey and allow that to cultivate. So what we talk about today, take it for how it applies to you, right? Take it with a grain of salt. Value quality over quantity. A lot of people, when they think of community, when they think of finding relationships and having friends and stuff, they want to find as many people as possible, right? They want to be around as many people as possible. A lot of times when you are around a lot of people and have a lot of relationships in your life, but they're all kind of surface level, that's when you feel the most lonely. But if you have 1, 2, 3 really, really good relationships, friendships, right? People in your life. Sometimes that's all you need. And everybody's journey is different, right? Everybody's journey is different. Everybody is at a different place, a different part of the world, navigating different things. So you need to understand that when it comes to relationships, it's not about finding as many people as you can to have relationships. It's about finding the right people for you. And sometimes the right people for you might be one person. Sometimes the right people for you might be 5 people. It's unique to your journey, right? And that can also change depending on the season you're in. Sometimes because of the season you're in, you're only going to gravitate and resonate with maybe 1 or 2 people. And then there's going to be other seasons where maybe you feel like you have 10 to 15 really, really good relationships in your life. Embrace them all. Understand they move in seasons. Relationships move in seasons. Some people come in your life for seasons and different reasons. Some people are lifelong and some people aren't. And our job is to work with the flow of life, is to allow God to bring certain people into our life. And if God wants to remove certain people into our life, or our growth is getting to a certain place where we don't align anymore, we have to be willing to let that go, let that process happen, right? I know it's not easy, but you can do it. You can do it. It is better to have a few deep, fulfilling relationships than many shallow connections. Seek people who bring positive energy, challenge you, and make you feel safe to be yourself. This is why going back to knowing yourself and aligning yourself with your truth and your authentic self and your highest self is so important, because when you know who you are and you're living in your truth, you understand that the only way a relationship is meant to be in your life is if you're allowed to operate in your most truest, authentic self, right? Now, take this with a grain of salt, because your truth and your most authentic self can look different depending on the relationship, right? But the core of who you are should always stay the same, right? Because sometimes you might have business relationships, you might have close friendships, you might have work friendships, you might have different types of people in your life from different arenas and avenues, right? But the core of who you are, if it's a real, genuine relationship, no matter where it is in your life, you should be able to be yourself in that space. And if you're not, that's a pretty good indicator that that's probably not a relationship you need to be in, or you need to learn how to navigate in a way that allows you to guard your heart, right? That allows you to protect yourself. Because sometimes you are going to be around certain people naturally, like work or school, whatever it is, class, whatever it may be. You are going to be around certain people naturally where you guys don't align, where maybe you don't really resonate with them. Maybe you don't even like them, right? You don't like the energy they put off. So you have to learn how to navigate those type of spaces and environments in a way that protects and guards your heart, because that is the most important thing. Me and my mom had a hour-long conversation about that yesterday, guarding your heart. She's been telling me that since high school. And when it finally clicked for me, when I finally gripped or grasped onto that concept and understood what it meant and started to apply it to my life changed. And she's so right. Because your heart is who you truly are, right? That's what it means when it says, above all else, guard your heart. Above all else, guard your truth. Above all else, guard your highest self. Guard your authentic self. Because that is the most important thing. No relationship, if it's truly genuine and healthy and meant to be, should make you feel like you have to change who you are to conform to the relationship. That's probably not a relationship that's for you, right? That's probably not a relationship that's for you. And this kind of segues into the next point, which is lead with vulnerability. A lot of people, this is where they mess up. A lot of people get into relationships portraying a false picture or idea to the other person to make that they think the other person would like, right? So you put up this facade because you think this facade, this picture that this character that I'm playing is what the other person is going to like. You put up this character and you put up this facade, and that's how you go into the relationship, right? Now, a few months later, as you guys get more comfortable, it gets harder and harder to keep that facade up, right? And you slowly try to resort back to what you know is actually you. But that's not who that person fell in love with. That's not who that person got into a relationship with. That's not who that person got involved with. And guess what that creates? A lot of confusion, a lot of non-alignment, right? A lot of non-alignment, a lot of friction in the relationship. So you need to lead into every relationship from a posture of vulnerability. And vulnerability doesn't mean you're going into relationships telling the person or people everything going on with your life. No, it means you're being vulnerable enough, courageous enough to lead with your most truest, authentic self, right? Because this is also guarding your heart. I'm going to go into every space and every relationship as my most truest, authentic self so that I can know if this relationship is for me. If I'm playing a character that's not true to me, I don't really know if this relationship is actually meant to be in my life, aligned with my journey, right? But when you lead with vulnerability and you lead with authenticity and you lead with your truth, you'll be able to tell very quickly if this relationship is aligned or not, right? So make sure that you are leading with your truth, leading with your vulnerable self, right? Don't allow what you think somebody else likes to get in the way of who you actually are. I'm going to repeat that again. Don't allow what you think somebody else will like to get in the way of who you actually are. It does no good to try to change yourself to make somebody else like you, because that relationship will not be built on authenticity and alignment. It will be built on this false picture that you've been trying to portray to get this person to like you or be with you or be around you or get involved with you. And those are not the relationships you want in your life, right? Those are not the relationships you want in your life. And going back to actually, I haven't released this episode yet. I think I'm going to reshoot it because something happened with the camera. But I made an episode on isolation and seasons of solitude. This is why it's so important to do that, because in order to start going into relationships and environments and spaces as your truest, authentic self, you have to have times of solitude, seasons of solitude, where you do figure out who you are, where you do look within yourself, where you do get clear on the core of your being, right? That's why they all work in tandem. In order to have healthy relationships, you have to go through seasons of isolation. You have to be willing to embrace those seasons. Embrace those seasons of solitude, right? So lead with vulnerability. It says, vulnerability is not a weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. And that was by Brene Brown. Being open about who you are, your values, and even your fears helps build trust and create genuine connections, right? I'm going to be open from day one about who I am, my values, what I stand for, my vision, and the life that I'm trying to live, right? Because I want you to know who I am, and I want this relationship to be built on alignment and authenticity. So from day one, let's just be honest. Let's just be vulnerable with who we actually are. And then let's make an aligned decision, an honest decision about if we should keep moving forward with this or not. Or should we tweak the type of relationship that we thought it should be, right? And that's why it's so important. It's so important to do that. And one of the tough parts, the toughest things about guarding your heart and staying true to yourself is you have to be willing to hurt people in the process, right? Sometimes guarding your heart and staying true to yourself is going to require a heartbreak. Sometimes staying true to yourself and guarding your heart is going to require you to let go of certain people. That doesn't feel good, right? For both parties sometimes. It doesn't feel good. And you are risking hurting that other person. But it's coming from a place of love. Love doesn't always mean it's going to feel good. Sometimes love requires pain. Sometimes love requires heartbreak, right? Sometimes love requires those really, really tough decisions. Can you make those, right? Because a lot of times relationships don't work because people don't know how to make tough decisions or the required decisions. And a lot of times the required decision is a tough decision, right? Communicating, learning how to navigate certain disagreements, right? You have to learn how to make tough decisions. That's what love requires, right? That's what healthy relationships require. So don't neglect your truth. Don't neglect your authentic self because you don't want to hurt somebody else. Because you thinking that you're not hurting them, but actually hurting yourself is actually hurting both of you, right? It's actually hurting both of you because a relationship is two people, two individuals coming together, right? So if you're hurting yourself, thinking that you're not hurting them, you're actually hurting the whole energy of the relationship, because you hurting yourself is going to start to bleed into the relationship, right? So you can never neglect yourself because you think it's going to help somebody else. That is not what healthy relationships will require. And if you're in a relationship right now where you feel like you have to neglect yourself to keep the relationship going or to make somebody else feel good, that is not a healthy relationship. And I'm here to tell you that right now. And I speak from experience. The amount of times I would neglect my truth and who I actually was in order to make somebody else feel comfortable, thinking that was the way to go, only got me hurt in the end, only got me more pain in the end, more heartbreak in the end, right? It only led to more friction in the relationship, right? Those are not the relationships you want. That's not how to cultivate healthy relationships. It's not how to cultivate healthy relationships, right? We touched on communication. It leads right into our next point. Listen to understand, not just to respond. One of the biggest issues on why majority of people have trouble finding, cultivating, keeping healthy relationships is lack of communication. This kind of goes into the vulnerability and leading with your truth and your authentic self. But you need to learn how to communicate. And this is something that I'm working on currently. I'm still working on. I'm always going to work on it. But it's something I've really, really honed in on from past relationships that I've experienced, is because I grew up a people pleaser, especially in those first few honeymoon phases of relationships when you get involved with somebody. You want to ride those emotions out. You don't want to create any friction between you two. So when certain things come up that you want to communicate or talk about that maybe not be the most comfortable or easiest to say, you push that stuff to the side because you don't want to mess up the way this feels. But in reality, you're really creating a weak foundation, because if you guys don't learn how to communicate, there is no relationship. There is no healthy relationship without good communication. So start from day one. Learn how to communicate with people from day one. Sometimes it's not going to feel good. It is going to be uncomfortable. You have to be willing to do that. That is what love requires. Love is not comfortable all the time, right? Love requires tough decisions, like we said, tough communication, tough conversations. You have to be willing to communicate your needs, your values, your perspectives, and you have to be able to listen without feeling the need to respond. You need to learn how to listen from a place of openness, not listening from a place of trying to be right, trying to find where they're wrong so you could say the right thing. That's not listening, right? That's what leads to arguments, right? Because disagreements are normal in relationships. Disagreements are normal in life. You're not going to agree with everybody. You're not always going to see eye to eye. But if you don't know how to communicate with somebody, it's always going to lead to an argument, or it's always going to lead to one person closing themselves off and y'all leaving and then just trying to push that stuff to the side and come back together and allow the emotions to keep you guys. Nah, it's not going to work. You cannot build a strong foundation based off of feelings in a relationship. Communication is one of the most important things you need for healthy relationships, intimate or not, friendships, family. You need to have really, really good communication. You need to learn how to communicate with people, right? And you see how this all ties in, right? Previous episodes, I think it was embracing struggle, right? Stuff like that. We talked about you need to learn how to embrace discomfort. Discomfort is part of the journey. This is a prime example of when discomfort will come up in your life. It is not easy to communicate about something that maybe you're struggling with in the relationship, something that you see that maybe you don't like, something that you want to talk about that you know won't be as fond. That is incredibly uncomfortable. You need to learn how to embrace it. But do you see how they all kind of work in tandem? It doesn't matter what topic we're talking about, y'all. It does not matter what topic we're talking about. All these things are connected in some way, shape, or form. So when you work on one, it's going to start to flow into the other, and then it flow into the other. And that's what becoming the best version of yourself is. We say it all the time. So you need to learn how to listen. This is, I should have said this earlier, but especially my men out there, but women too, everybody, but especially my men out there. When it comes to intimate relationships, you need to lead with listening. When it comes to finding a partner, when it comes to getting involved with a significant other, you need to lead with listening, right? As a man, you need to understand that, yes, you are a provider. Yes, you are a protector. Yes, you have to be operating in your masculine in a healthy way. But all that requires you to listen so that you can understand your significant other, right? You need to learn how to lead with listening. Also, what that allows you to do is it allows you to pick up on things that maybe not be aligned early. So often when we go into relationships and we want to impress the other person, we're so worried about talking all the time. I got to tell them everything I'm doing and I got to try to sound good all the time. You need to learn how to listen, because a lot of times when you truly listen with an open mind and an open heart, right? Not listening to respond, but listening to understand, you're going to start to hear certain things that come up that either align with you or they don't, right? And it's so important to figure out that stuff early rather than trying to get involved with somebody just because of the feelings. And then 6 months or a year later, all these things start to come up that both of y'all are looking at each other like, what the heck going on? This was not around when we first started. Yeah, because we didn't lead with communication. We didn't lead with listening to each other. We led with feelings. We led with emotion, right? We led with that high, that honeymoon phase. Don't lead with that. You're building a weak foundation. It says active listening means paying attention to the other person. It's essential in any relationship to make others feel valued and understood. My mom said this to me yesterday and it hit me so deep. Do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? Do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? Because a lot of times you won't be both. In relationships, there's going to be times where you guys have disagreements. You guys have a little back and forth. You guys are trying to navigate something. And so often we get so caught up in trying to be right all the time that it leads to more friction, more rigidity, right? More disagreements. Rather than taking the posture of, I need to approach this misunderstanding from a place of wanting to be effective. What is effective for our relationship, right? I don't need to be right all the time. I don't need to be right. And for all the men out there, real men know that they don't need to be right all the time. You do not need to be right all the time. You need to be effective. That's what being a provider and a protector is. Being effective, not being right, right? Not always trying to operate in your masculine and put this, this strong man face up. No, you don't need to be right all the time. You need to be effective. Goes for women too, right? Y'all don't need to be right all the time. You need to be effective. You need to understand what that person, that significant other, that friendship, that relationship needs from you in order to be effective. But so many people, we get into relationships and our relationships are built on ego and not genuine connection. So our ego says we need to be right. We need to win this argument, right? We need to win this disagreement. I need to prove my point. That comes from a place of insecurity. If you feel like you always need to prove your point all the time, that's coming from a place of insecurity within yourself. When you're truly secure in who you are, you understand you don't need to be right all the time because it doesn't really get you there anywhere. Being right all the time doesn't really get you anywhere in a relationship. It will get you somewhere alone or in a very toxic relationship. You don't need to be right all the time. You need to be effective. And effective is good communication. Effective is listening to understand, not to respond. Effective is leading with love. Effective is doing what's required rather than what feels good all the time, right? So you need to learn how to lean more on being effective and not just being right. Next point, set and respect boundaries. I'm going to tie it all in again. How can you have boundaries for yourself if you don't have a relationship with yourself? Boundaries comes from a place of self-respect and trust and self-love. If you don't have a strong relationship with yourself, it's very, very hard to have healthy boundaries in your life. And that's what gets so many people taken advantage of. That's why so many people feel like people just walk all over them in relationships. There is no strong foundation built within themselves, which leads to weak boundaries or no boundaries, right? You need to learn how to set and respect your boundaries, right? This all goes in. When you start to love yourself, you're going to start focusing on guarding your heart, which is going to require you to set boundaries. And because you respect yourself so much, you're going to respect those boundaries. And respecting your boundaries sometimes is going to hurt other people. And that's what you're going to have to do sometimes, right? That is what you're going to have to do sometimes. You got to learn how to respect your boundaries. Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. That is Brené Brown again. She is amazing. Boundaries aren't walls. They are guidelines for respect and mutual growth. Come on, man. They're not walls. A lot of people confuse boundaries with walls that they put up. A lot of times the walls that we put up become the same walls that imprison our true self, right? So you need to make sure you're setting healthy boundaries and not toxic walls. A lot of people set walls because of things that have happened to them before, right? So they close off. Boundaries don't close your heart off. Boundaries open you up, but they protect your heart. What walls do is they close you off, right? And that's why a lot of people walk around going into relationships with the expectation, this person's probably going to hurt me, or this person's probably going to do this, or this isn't, you know what I mean? It's like, it's tough. It's a tough way to live. It's a tough way to live. So you need to understand where the boundaries are coming from and make sure they're not walls keeping you closed off, right? You got to get to the root of why I'm setting this. Are you setting it from a place of self-love and respect? Or are you setting it from a place of being hurt and ego, right? Got to figure that out. If you are not operating from a place of positivity, love, and gratitude, I don't want to be around you. And that is coming from a place of love. That is not coming from a place of hate or trying to push people away. No, it's coming from a place of self-respect and self-love. Like I said, we have that energetic boundary around us, right? And in that boundary, you have a certain energy that you've cultivated. Positivity, love, gratitude, joy, peace, right? Openness. We're not allowing people who are the opposite of that to come into that energy boundary. We're not letting people into that, right? And that is not hating a person or judging a person or pushing a person away. That is guarding your heart. And you need to be willing to do that, right? You need to be willing to do that. Because if you don't, people are going to feel like they can do that anytime that they want. No, you can't. Not to me, at least. You can do it if you want, not to me, right? And that's just me. And I'm so grateful. Like, being able to say that out of my mouth is so liberating for me, because I'm telling y'all, when I tell y'all I grew up the biggest people pleaser there was. I don't like confrontation with people. I don't like negative energy with people. I don't like having bad blood with people, right? So because I didn't like any of those things, I was always the one to mend relationships. But I've realized that that's not my job. My job is to protect my peace and protect my heart. I don't need to worry about what somebody else does or the energy that somebody else is cultivating. I need to focus on myself, right? And I need to guard that. And you don't need to be focused on always trying to mend relationships. You need to learn how to become aware of what somebody does, right? See the truth of who somebody is, and then navigate it from there. Not what you think about them, what they show you, right? Because a lot of times the idea and the picture that we've created for another person keeps us stuck in relationships, even when they've showed us that's not who they are, because we're attached to this idea of them, right? And we don't have the self-awareness, the self-respect, or the self-love to be able to see who they actually are and then operate from that space. So that's why you need to learn how to set and respect boundaries. Leading into the next point, surround yourself with people who align with your growth and your journey. You don't need to be friends with everybody. And you need to understand that you're not meant to be friends with everybody. You're not meant to be liked by everybody, and you're not meant to like everybody. You need to be around people who align with your growth. If you don't want to grow, if you don't want to be better, if you don't want to live an authentic and aligned life, I do not want to be around you. If you don't want to change, if you don't want to be better, right? If you don't want to pursue the highest version of yourself, I don't want to be around you. And like I say, I'm going to always say this. I mean that from a place of love. I promise you. but I don't want to be around you. And I'm not going to let you just invade my space whenever you want. No. Because here's the thing. I've learned this. You get to a certain level of self-respect and self-love where you're not going to change who you are to make people feel comfortable. And knowing how positive a person and genuine of a person I am, and how much I try to root myself in that gratitude and that positive perspective every single day, I understand that when I'm around certain people who are negative-minded, pessimist, closed off, there's two options. Either I dim my light to make them feel comfortable, or I say, I'm definitely not doing that. You're not going to feel comfortable around me because I'm not changing who I am. I'm not changing my truth to make you feel comfortable. No. You could sit over there and be in your negative little corner by yourself, but I promise you I'm not changing who I am. Right? And you need to be able to stand on that. Like, you really need to be able to stand on that. I don't care what environment I am in. I don't care who I'm around. I'm not changing who I am to make people feel comfortable around me. Right? Because I don't want to keep people who don't feel comfortable with the growth mindset and the positivity around me. I don't. Right? And that's why you need to lead with your truth and your authentic self in everywhere that you go. Right? Don't start changing who you are in order to conform to an environment or to a relationship. That is not the way to cultivate healthy relationships in your life. Be so much yourself that it pushes the people who aren't for you away, and it attracts the people who are for you into your life, right? Be so much yourself that you become a magnet for that energy to come back to you, to be attracted to you, right? Choose friends and partners who encourage you to grow, not those who want you to stay the same. Healthy relationships support evolution and challenging stagnation. You need to be able to pick up on this early, especially when you're getting involved with somebody. Do they have a growth mindset or a stagnant mindset? You need to be able to pick up on that early. How do you pick up on that? Listen to what they say and how they speak. Watch how they move. Watch the things they do. You can tell very quickly the difference between somebody who has a growth mindset and a stagnant mindset. Somebody who's willing to grow and somebody who's not willing to grow. You can tell very quickly. And you need to be able to push the feelings and emotions to the side so that you can have a clear picture of who this person actually is, rather than allowing your emotions and your feelings to cloud your judgment, which I've done so many times in my past. It does not lead to healthy relationships. It does not help you cultivate healthy relationships, right? So you need to surround yourself with people who align with your growth, man, right? There's a saying that if you show me the five closest people you spend the most time with, I can show you your future. That is a fact. It is a fact, right? Because who you're around is either going to pull you up or drag you down. It's either going to push you forward or hold you back. So you need to be incredibly intentional with who you spend time with and who you're around on a day-to-day basis. You need to be incredibly intentional with that. This is not something to just leave up for chance. This is not something that you just hope for. No, you become intentional with it and you make it that way. That's the beautiful thing about relationships. You get to dictate the type of relationships you have in your life. And how do you do that? You start to live intentionally. So many people hope for good relationships. You got to make good relationships. They take effort. They take time. They take consistency and they take commitment, right? Not hope. We ain't going into relationships hoping this works out. No, we're going to make it work out. And if it doesn't, we're going to understand that and have the self-respect and the self-love and the ability to step away and make an aligned decision, right? The next one says, practice appreciation regularly. This is one of the most important things if you want to continue to cultivate healthy relationships in your life. You need to make people feel valued, right? Flip it. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you never feel like they're valuing you, if they never make you feel valued as an individual, how does that make you feel? Not good, right? You need to be able to really, really start appreciating the people who allow you to be yourself, right? Make that an active and daily practice in your life. I am going to make sure that people that really, really have a positive impact on my life know how much I appreciate and value them. right? We're not going to leave that up to chance. We're not going to just say, I feel like they know that. No, we're going to make sure they know that. And we're going to use our words. We're going to use our actions, right? We're going to use our phones, whatever it is. Make people feel appreciated and valued. Because when people truly feel appreciated and valued, they're going to want to show up and be the best version of themselves. They're going to want to show up and grow with you. They're going to want to show up and give everything they have to the relationship, right? And stand on that commitment. But one of the worst feelings in the world is not feeling valued when you know that you're really, really trying your best, right? Not feeling appreciated when you're really, really trying your best. So knowing how much that doesn't feel good, keep that in your mind when it comes to how you treat other people or how you speak to other people. Make sure that is an intentional thing you are doing in your relationships. That is how you cultivate and keep healthy relationships in your life. Make sure they know how much you appreciate them and how much you value them. And you're not doing it because you want something in return. You're doing it because that's how you genuinely feel about this person. Don't do things expecting something in return. Do it because it's actually who you are. Do it because it's true to who you are, right? A lot of people do things expecting something in return, and then when they don't get it back, they switch up, they change, they do something different. That's a very, very weak way to go into relationships and situations in our life. You need to go into things and do things from the core of who you actually are, from the truth of who you actually are, not expecting a damn thing in return, respectfully. I don't need nothing in return to be myself, right? Think about that. We live in a world where people only want to be themselves if they get something in return for it. How diabolical is that? That is very, very counterintuitive. You should be yourself because it's who God made you to be, not because you're going to get something in return for it. It's because it's the core of who you actually are as an individual, as a unique soul, right? You need to just be yourself because that's the point of this life, to be all of who God made you to be your most truest, highest version of yourself without expecting anything in return. The stuff that comes after that is a byproduct of it, right? But you're not focused on it. You're doing what's true and aligned for you. But when you do what's true and aligned for you, that's when you get the most in return. So it's like, it's not like you're compromising one thing to get another when you start staying true to yourself and living an authentic way. No, you actually gain everything that's for you. You actually gain more in return than you could have ever imagined, right? So, you need to learn how to do that. Learn how to do that. Yes, practice it regularly. Take time to express gratitude for the people you value. Acknowledging their presence and actions strengthens the bond and creates positive reinforcement in the relationship. What's understood don't need to be said. We got it. On to the next point. Be patient with the process. You need to understand cultivating a healthy relationship or healthy relationships takes time. A lot of people get involved with people and want to rush the process. They want to rush the relationship. And what do you get? Rushed results. You need to learn how to take your time cultivating healthy relationships. You need to learn how to get to know somebody, right? You need to learn how to communicate with somebody because the way you communicate with one person is going to be totally different than the way you communicate with another person, right? So you have to give yourself the grace and patience with that relationship in order to figure out who this person is and what do they need from me, right? What does this person need from me, right? Don't go in thinking, oh, I got to do all this. No, what do they need from me? And I'm going to communicate what I need from them. And we're going to make that commitment that we're going to work on that together, right? And being able to get to a place to where we're both giving each other what we need from each other in an aligned and healthy way takes time. It's a process. It takes time, right? It takes time. A lot of the reasons we rush into relationships is because we don't like being alone. It's because we get involved in relationships for the wrong reasons. It's because we're trying to cope with a feeling that has nothing to do with that relationship, right? But we don't know how to cope with it. We don't know how to heal from it. We don't know how to grow from it. So we get involved with the wrong people. We rush into another relationship or relationships, right? You need to be patient with the process. Healthy relationships don't happen overnight. They require patience, commitment, and a willingness to grow, both individually and together. A lot of people are in relationships wanting the other person to grow or to be better or to do this, but they don't understand that the best way for the relationship to grow is for both people to focus on the things that they need to do individually, because that is what they're going to bring to the collective relationship, to the duo or to the group, right? So many people go into relationships, and then when they want the relationship to be better in a certain area, or they want to grow the relationship, or they want to heal certain things or navigate certain things, they focus on what the other person needs to do. And that person focuses on what they need to do. But y'all need to focus on what y'all need to do individually and then come together from that place rather than what the other person needs to do in order to help the relationship grow, right? But you have to be patient with this process. Good relationships are going to take time to cultivate, right? Sometimes, and I speak from experience, I know y'all know this. There's certain people in my life I knew from day one. This is lifelong. I knew it from day one. There's just some people are meant to be in your life forever, right? But in order to continue to cultivate it and keep it lifelong, you have to be patient with that, and you have to actively work to keep on doing the things you need to do to keep that relationship healthy and fulfilled and flowing gracefully, right? So you need to learn how to navigate relationships, cultivate healthy relationships, right? It's all going to start with the relationship you have with yourself. And that's literally what the last point says. Prioritize your own self-worth and self-love. You accept the love you think you deserve. Understand that you accept the love you think you deserve, right? We wonder why so many people stay in relationships where the other person is obviously showing them, right, that they're not willing to grow. They're not willing to be better. Obviously showing them that they don't value them the way that they think they do, right? But why do we stay with those type of people? Because you accept the love you think you deserve. A lot of people have such a low level of self-worth and self-respect and self-love. And that's how they get involved in relationships, or that's how they get into relationships. And they wonder why people treat them the way they do over and over and over. And what starts to happen over time, because people have hurt you, they've stepped all over you, they've taken advantage of you, you start to gain resentment for people, right? You start to gain resentment for people, and that's when you start to hear things like, all men are trash, all women are hoes. But they never look at themselves. They never focus on the fact that they have such a low level of self-worth and self-respect. It's not the woman's fault. It's not the man's fault. It's not the other person's fault. It's you. Because you accept the love you think you deserve. Right? You accept the love you think you deserve. So, if you keep accepting stuff you don't like, that's probably coming from a place or a lack of self-love and self-worth. And we need to get to that root before we start focusing on what the other person is doing wrong, right? Because when your self-worth and your self-respect rises, so do your boundaries, right? So does the love you have for yourself. So does the protection that you have for yourself. So you're not going to allow people to just walk all over you like they once did. And people can feel it when you have certain boundaries in place. People can feel that, right? They can feel it, right? You really can feel when somebody is has a certain level of self-respect, self-love, and self-worth. And people know not to step on that. And if they try to, it ain't going to work. It's only going to hurt them. You can try to take advantage of me. You can try to approach me with negative energy, but it's only going to hurt you, right? Because the way my energy shield is set up is I've created it to where it only allows in the energy that aligns with the bubble I'm in. So it repels everything that isn't that. So you don't even have to do anything. When you have a certain level of self-respect, self-worth, and self-love, you don't have to push people away. Those type of people aren't going to want to be around you. That's what you need to understand, right? And that's the difference between self-love, self-worth, self-respect coming from a place of spirit, alignment, and authenticity, and this false sense of self-respect and self-worth coming from a place of ego and insecurity and hurt. That's the difference. When it comes from a place of insecurity, lack, or past hurt, past trauma, you push people away. When it comes from a place of alignment in your truth, self-love, self-respect, that repels people away, right? It's a big difference. It is a big difference. A lot of people, because of what has happened to them before, they constantly push people away. And in that process of pushing people away, you're pushing people that actually are healthy for you, that actually want to grow with you, that actually want to be there for you, right? But you don't have to worry about pushing anybody away when you're rooted in your truth, because that in itself, that energy in itself will repel the people that aren't aligned with that away. So I hope that gives you guys some clarity and some perspective on how to navigate healthy relationships, how to nurture good relationships, right? How to cultivate relationships in your life, right? You guys got this. We all got this. This is a relationship, right? Like I said, relationships come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms, right? And they express themselves in so many different ways. We have a relationship through this camera, through this phone screen, through this YouTube video, through this audio, whatever it is. We have a relationship. And how do we cultivate it, right? We work together. I listen to you, you listen to me, and that's what comes out in the content. I was saying this in a live the other day. I need y'all to understand something. Yes, I am speaking with my voice, but the words that come out of my mouth is coming from a place greater than what we can see. God speaks through our gifts. I understand through that journey of self-discovery and figuring out who I am, I do have a gift of articulation and of speaking, right? That's the gift. The gift was given to me for the service of other people. But God speaks to us. He speaks to the world through our gifts, right? And that's why so many people struggle in this life, because they are constantly trying to pursue other people's gifts. You need to learn how to tap into your gifts. And what's going to happen when you tap into your gifts, that's where you can collaborate with God, because God cannot collaborate with you if you're not staying true to yourself. God cannot collaborate with you if you're putting on this false idea of who you want to be, this false picture, this false vision of your life. God can only work with you when you're operating in your gifts, right? From the standpoint of like being able to really do what you were meant to do. That's what I mean. Like God could work with you. God works with you through all seasons and facets of life, right? But as you can see from this podcast, most of the things we talk about is looking inward and focusing on the things that we have control over. So yeah, understand that when I speak, that's God speaking through me to all of us, to me included, right? And whatever you believe in, right? I know there's a lot of people that when they hear that I say I'm not a Christian and I don't abide by any specific religion, they get really confused. There's two things I have to say to that. One, I'm going to be very, very open and honest with y'all. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all more than y'all know. But I understand that when you have a genuine connection to something greater and you find your truth and you walk in alignment with that, you don't owe anybody an explanation. And it's okay to be misunderstood. You need to understand you have to do what's right for you. You are a unique individual on your own unique journey. What's for you is not always going to be what's for other people. And you have to be okay with that. But so often, because we try to please everybody and we try to conform to certain environments or to certain pictures that society try to put up, we don't stay true to ourselves. We neglect what's actually aligned with us in order to conform to an environment or a society or an arena. But we're not doing that no more. Stay true to you and live in that. And if people don't understand it, that's okay. If people don't agree, that is okay. Right? If people try to lash out and try to change you and do all this stuff, that is okay, because that's not a reflection of you. That's a reflection of them. When you have a genuine connection to something and you're living in your authentic, aligned, highest self, or pursuing that truly from the right intentions, I promise you're not going to be worried about trying to get people to agree with you or get people to see your perspective or the way you see life. I promise you. That is going to be the last thing on your list, right? Because that is coming from a place of ego. We're not worried about getting people to agree with us or see eye to eye. This podcast, With a Grain of Salt, is about taking life with a grain of salt. It's about being able to speak openly and express yourself from your truth and your uniqueness, right? And find the people that resonate with it and let go of the people that don't. It's okay, right? This is a space where we can all come as we are, be our most truest, authentic self, and speak from that place. And sometimes you speaking from that place won't always align with the things that work for me, but it will align with the authentic version of myself. So we can still connect through the differences. We can still connect through not seeing eye to eye, right? Because we understand that being authentic and being unique means that we're not always going to see eye to eye. We're not always going to agree. But that's why we connect, because you're operating in your authentic self. I'm operating in my authentic self. And we create this energy that allows us to come into this relationship as ourself. So I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. And remember, most importantly, to take everything with a grain of salt. I will catch you guys next week. We out.